The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, good day, and good evening to all our attendees joining us for today's latest Data Science Central webinar. I'd like to start by thanking Tableau Software for sponsoring today's event. Tableau is a wonderful supporter of the Data Science Central community, and we are very honored to have them sponsoring our event today. I'd also like to take this opportunity to mention and briefly show our support for some of our other sponsors, including TIBCO Spotfire, MarkLogic, Pivotal, Hortonworks, and Splunk, to name just a few. These past webinars are available on demand at datasciencecentral.com, and if you've not seen them before, I would encourage you to take a look, as they do provide some very good perspective and information regarding our industry. Today's webinar is entitled Visualizing Big Data at Wells Fargo. And before we begin, I'd like to briefly review the format of today's event. Today's webinar will be 1 hour long. We have two panelists that I'll introduce to all of you in just a moment. We should have approximately 15 minutes for Q&A following the presentation. And as always, this event is being taped and will be made available at datasciencecentral.com later on today. I would also like to encourage our attendees to provide questions directly to me throughout the presentation. I will be reviewing them, and I will present them on your behalf with the time remaining. My name is Tim Madison. I'm one of the co-founders of Data Science Central, and I will be your host for today's event. I'm very pleased to introduce our panelists, John St. John of Wells Fargo and Dustin Smith of Tableau Software. Welcome to you both. John is the head of analytics and metrics for Wells Fargo's consumer learning and development and human resource reporting. He leads the analysis and reporting functions for over 160,000 team members. He has a PhD in physical chemistry and extensive background in physics and chemistry and biomedical applications of nanomaterials, all of which have required large data sets for applied math and theoretical calculations. Dustin is the product marketing and community manager at Tableau, and he specializes in effective data visualization and teaching others how to convey metrics beyond the, quote, data crowd. He has a background as a healthcare curriculum developer, a data analyst, and a senior product consultant. Dustin is now a full-time Tableau user evangelist. In today's webinar, you will learn how you can use big data to forecast and monitor hiring, oversee learning and development courses, track content quality, gaps, and redundancies, and efficiently and effectively distribute insight to key stakeholders. So John, you're going to be going first today, so I'm going to pass the presentation off to you, and you should be able to begin whenever you are ready.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with everyone today.
There you go. I think you're good.
Excellent. Thank you very much. As was mentioned, my name is John St. John. I am in charge of analytics and metrics for the largest banking human resources department in the world, at the largest market share bank in the world. We have a large number of people in a lot of different discrete job descriptions and a lot of customer-focused areas that we have to keep track of. And so it is a massive project in terms of the numbers of things that these people have to do to get their jobs done to serve our customers, and in order to track the things that in the background help them do their jobs. And that is specifically what our HR team does. We're going to be talking today about how the data associated with human resources is used to help run the nation's largest bank. And I'll be discussing sort of where this came from a background and strategy perspective, how we adapted our data sets to begin moving forward with a continuous feedback and continuous update model rather than a weekly, monthly, or bi-monthly report type of model. be talking about the process and mechanism we use to put that in place, how it actually is used by our people. Then those people, our team members, are used to work within our business, all of our lines of business, and then to grow through serving all of our customers. So the background and strategy, the first thing that you have to take a look at within a company as large as ours and with as many team members as ours is the simple reality of the infrastructure, the scope of the information, what everyone's cross-pattern goals are, and then where the physical limitations lie with this much information flowing. There begins to be a problem associated with the reality and the tyranny of numbers with all of the transactions and information. It's the largest institution of its kind currently in the history of the industry of financial banking. There are some military organizations larger than ours. There are certainly some governmental organizations larger than ours, but there are very few human resources departments in a consumer-focused organization as large as the one that we are dealing with. We are responsible for 1/3 of every single customer contact transaction in U.S. consumer interactions for the financial industry. So out of every 3 banking or financial transactions made in the United States, our company is responsible for one of those. That adds up to 35 million recorded financial data transactions every single day that occur, are logged, recorded, and tied back to something within our industry organization. For the side of life that I work with, which are consumer interaction team members, those people that actually work with and handle our customers' financial transactions, we have 70,421, this is real-time data that was pulled from the servers as of a day ago, team members that are in transactions, and then 105,541 that are in community retail transactions. This is something that's updated all day, every day for us with a continuous feed of information. And every one of these people, as a team member, have to be tracked. They have to be monitored. They have to be, not from a Big Brother perspective, but to make sure that they have the resources they need to do their jobs well, so that their managers have the resources they need to do their jobs well, and so that the data for doing their jobs well is provided to them in an efficient and organized fashion. And that's where we've begun to use tools like Tableau to help us track and analyze this information, to kind of sit in the background and keep things running as though it's the oil inside of a high-performance engine. So here is the scope of the information that I'll be talking about today. And this is a Tableau plot. This is fed directly from our server of our org chart, actually. And the plot is actually a screen grab of the number of team members that we'll be talking about today, which is 70,421. That screen grab was a few days ago, but it's up to date by probably 50 or 60 in either direction, depending on our attrition rates and the number of people that have come on board since then at that point in time. And this is the group that we'll be discussing today, that will talk about their training, what they do, how we track them, how we follow them, and what we do to keep all of that information at their fingertips. Heading the wrong way, I apologize. So this is an example of some of the types of information. In the lines of business associated with customer-focused team members, we have a whole series of different businesses that provide these services to our customers. And this is a very high 10,000-foot or higher view from satellite in space about where those team members exist. So this is the type of information which is a continuously updated plot given to someone like our CEO or one of the executives in this line of business. It simply tells them how many people are working in this line of business. Each one of these data points in a live Tableau function is something which could be clicked on, opened up to find out what kind of jobs these people have, what they do, where they are located, who their managers are, what their performance metrics are, all the different things associated with it. But this is a coalesced view of where everyone is located in the different businesses. And so these are things like retail banking, default and retention, servicing for loans, dealer services for the auto industry, collections, capital markets, consumer financial services, even down to some of the home lending types of things. And that's where all of our various team members actually exist. This is a plot which exists on a Tableau server that at any time it is a fully functioning plot that anyone can open up and click on and deal with to see where everyone is. The color coding is actually a part of our internal system where we have specific lines of business given color codes to help sort of keep track of things within the various lines of data that we have associated with the lines of business. Again, a million foot, this is from the moon type of picture. This is that 70,421 team members who are located within the United States, not showing Hawaii or Alaska. We do have team members in those locations. Looking at their specific job function, the plot here does not show the thousands of job functions that these team members do. You can see we have a large group here at our mothership for consumer lending in Wells Fargo, which is located in Des Moines. And then there are various large isolated islands associated with the rest of the country that are all tuned to different lines of businesses, job functions, and things. And within this particular plot, which is a very important set of information for all of the people in executive management and other leadership, there are ways to filter and click through and see where the consumer lending group exists and what job functions they have simply by taking a few clicks and filtering the data to figure out where people exist and work within that. This, again, shows some of the large HR functional landscape. This looks simply at consumer lending at about 3 months' worth of data with the line of business functions, the number of people that have been hired, and number of positions that have been filled since the early part of this year. So we've had 7,258 positions filled with a total of 13,687 new hires. That plot looks like a forest of information that would be impossible for one person to discern, and that's absolutely correct. This is where we begin to use some of the functionality associated with Tableau to sort this data, to find out where people exist by location, where people exist by all of these myriad job titles. You can see this cuts off. This would actually be a slider bar that lets you move down, and a set of filter functions where we would be looking at, for example, loan preservation officers, collections officers, things like that, who have specific job functions, when they were hired, how long they've been on board, and then we can tie that into what their proficiency measurements are, who their managers are, what their manager's proficiency has been, and all the things that are associated with the training of these people. Within 13,000 people, there are some 250,000 hours of training that have gone into this group of people, not in a consecutive fashion, but large classes of people who have been trained on regulations, on working with our customers, on helping to ensure that financial transactions move smoothly, and all of that is tracked and controlled within multiple databases, and using a lot of the functionality of Tableau merged and presented to people in a graphical format that lets them get their information out of it. So how was a decision made specifically to begin looking at this information in a what I call continuous flow of information reporting function? And that means that we have moved out of the idea that a snapshot is taken, compiled, and given to people, and a manager or person who needs information can log in, find the information they need through simple filter type of systems, and then take their own snapshot of what they need at that given moment in time. Well, the decision for that was made simply when we realized that the army of people associated with tracking and controlling this data, and the fact that there is a difficulty sometimes with old, new, and medium-aged databases, query systems, and certainly web-based functionality from SharePoint sites to Excel files to large SQL servers and large Teradata systems, all talking to each other. We realized that with that type of system, we were going to continue to run into problems with getting the information in a format that provided people what they needed to do their jobs as team members well. So we realized that a strategy was needed to begin connecting these pieces of information. And one key component with our company is that every team member is given a unique identifier called a team member ID, similar to a Social Security number in the United States. It is an absolute unchangeable point of record for every every single team member. Once you recognize that that existed across multiple databases, the only thing left at that point in time was to find a way to merge and link all of those pieces of data out there within one output-based system that connected things across that team member ID. And Tableau is actually ideal for that, as you'll see in a little while. We are able to take 20 to 30 different types of data systems, link the team member ID across them, and have cross-functionality between them to plot and show lots of different sources of data and provide unique ways to identify correlations between the data and give that back to our team members to do their jobs better. So we had to connect with all of our learning solutions, all of our HR data, and all of our information, organize that by lines of business, and then partner with the lines of business to obtain the data on the functionality that they do. I have ownership of all of the HR data and Learning Center data, so everyone's job, date they were hired, what they do, all of the information that is both the business side of the HR functionality as well as the human resources side of the HR functionality existed in my databases, readily available, and all of their learning, all of the training and required elements of what a person does was in the data that I had. We then had to connect within the businesses, talk to them, and get access to their data to show how many widgets do they create in an hour, how many customers do they contact, things like that, tie it all back to team member ID, and then begin producing data and views of that information that help people do their jobs. So here's an example of a picture from the Tableau desktop full version that has a lot of information. And the first thing is the list of databases. These are the class rosters for every single course updated continuously in this database and grabbed a hold by the Tableau system. For every team member, you saw there were 13,000 that had been hired by that time. Every one of them is logged in by their team member ID, and every class that they take is in their records for their information. Then the org chart, which is updated almost hourly by everything. The courses, then manager information associated with their information. And within each of those databases, you can see here we're clicked on class roster. We have information about what the activity was, all the information associated with it, where it was, who their instructor was, what they were learning, things like that. Here's an example of some of the output for that. This is a picture of a series of courses, the team member job titles of people who took that, and then some information out here about the dates and sizes of the classes that were associated. I've blanked out the information on the instructors' names and things like that. That is my end of the Tableau information. We have about 60 to 70,000 learning activities that take place every week. All of that is logged and stored and studied for the associated information with what people do. So this is the messy side of the Tableau. Very clean and organized from my perspective, not clean and organized from an output perspective. But I was able to take every one of these databases with a few simple clicks and really a few minutes of magic, grab the information, merge it by team member ID, have a picture of where the hierarchy was of every team member, and then an idea of where they had taken courses, where they lived, where their associated office was, even down to what their phone number and other information was, all in a simple to understand database that's graphical in its interface. From there we can build outputs. So here's an example of all that information that I showed you a moment ago that is a continuously updated output. So once I locked in all the information and provided an idea of what the picture was of the information, I was able to build what we call a dashboard. This is organized by a line of business. The line of business here is called loan servicing, and so these are the people who take questions that people have about loans. And this was one that was information for executives on how much training, how many people have been hired, how many have been trained. So this shows the total number of team members in that particular line of business, 4,254. That's updated continuously as new people are hired and removed. The percentage that have received the required amount of training, that percent trained is the required amount of training that gets them seated in their job function and allows them to interact with our customers. These are the total number of new hires that were trained and the percentage of those that received all of their training at that moment in time. This shows the type of content for the information that was provided in business-specific training, career development, compliance training, some of the nulls that show up, which are off-base training, and then their orientation type of training. And then this is the information of the senior executive managers and who they are and how many people have been trained in their group, and this is the associated number that have received specific new hire training, and then this shows who's been doing that training. It's an important series of information for the executives as well as the executives in HR and corporate training to have this picture, and there's one of these built for every single one of our lines of business. And all total, once you get the format together for this, it's about 5 minutes of clicking. At that point, it's a live, updatable set of picture of information that people can look at, log into, find the information out about their teams, and have this really as suitable for a PowerPoint presentation, or they can even embed it into a PowerPoint and be able to pull it directly off of our server. The more unique thing associated with this is not live right now, but a person could right-click on any one of these bars and get this information, right-click, download, and export it immediately to an Excel file already filtered with the information as you see on the screen right there for them to study and use. I'm going to move out of the presentation for a second to show you this live because I exported the workbook associated with this. This is Tableau. I exported a workbook associated with Tableau, and so I'll see if it gives me a good picture. There we go. This is what a person logging in through a web browser would see in the Tableau server associated with this. So there is a picture of the learning and development. Learning and development is our team of trainers associated with Wells Fargo, and that team of trainers has a set of projects. Right now, according to this snapshot, when I pulled the workbook off of our server, there are 115 projects spanning some 2 lines of business in this case, production and servicing in this case. They are divided up by projects that are green that are on track, projects that are, or projects that are green that are ahead of schedule, yellow that are not, and gray that are closed or canceled. There would be a red if there were anything behind schedule. This data to give this picture is pulled directly from a SQL server. If we highlight here, we can see that here's some that are in something called design. So there's information on design. A click comes up, which allows you to go to more information about it. This will update here in a second and give us the info on the design project. You can highlight over it and see all the information about what's going on with the projects at that point in time. And that's really where they are. What you're looking at is stored on our Tableau server, and the data source for it is a large SQL server somewhere where hundreds of thousands of projects for project management are stored. And the manager or person using this information logs in through a web browser without any extra software, and all of that information associated with all the people, lines of business, data, and things that they're actually trained a little bit in how to interpret and understand. There's a red project, as I mentioned, something that's on hold. The executive can look at this and see what is that project that's on hold. And they only need a browser to log in and do exactly what I'm showing you here, which is to filter and find projects. Let's say they wanted to know all their projects, their analysis. There's a total of 4. You can click here to view details about it. There's one single one, so it gives me the pull-up of all the information associated with it, and mostly for the executive, in this case, who's responsible. This view is living on a web browser. It lives on our Tableau server and is accessible through any web browser without any extra software to be downloaded, and it's continuously updated. Once I set it up, as long as I don't need to make changes to the structure or function, this particular set of dashboards associated with everything from the projects themselves to the map that shows where they are located is updated continuously without me having to go in and make adjustments or changes to the project. So here's where projects with a specific delivery location, again, people can highlight over the info and see information about that particular project and where it's going. So that's an example of how we use this kind of thing to organize our data and our information. So how do our people use this? I gave a little example of that. We have established a core team and then a support team associated with it. The core team initially was me developing and learning the mechanisms of the data, and then we began to build a small support team of 2 other individuals. So the entire HR output and data analytics for a 160,000 team member organization is run by a total of 2 people for the output and data. Now within that there's an enterprise level of people who certainly maintain and handle the databases, but the metrics and analytics component associated with this are 2 people that handle the output for these dashboards and data sets. And then we have an external support structure that I just mentioned, which is the enterprise group that handles the databases, the query writing, the work associated with pulling the data in from the lines of business, and certainly the training and things like that. So an example of that was, for example, the HR, Open Recs, and position field data. We have a large human resources database associated with all of our information that is run by a PeopleSoft type of system. Tapping into that is very easy from a Tableau type of system. Building a database is very easy, and with that we have now consolidated and pulled together specific sets of information that show how many people are hired within a given time frame and where they all go by executive manager and then moving down to senior manager. This is another set of information here that is the individual managers, and you can filter by that group, and an individual manager can figure out how many hundreds of people have been hired in his specific organization over the last few weeks, months, or days, where they've gone and what they're doing, as well as figure out how long their open recs have been sitting on the boards so that they don't have positions that are open and not being filled, and they have deficiencies within their team. And there are ways that we've automated this to help email and let people know, hey, you've got an open rec, it's moving past 30 days, are you on top of that? Is that something that you need to be aware of? Things like that, that all are provided through the Tableau data mechanism system. I use it from an applied math perspective to help with the analytics associated with our projections. We have a fairly sophisticated set of hiring. These numbers here are the number of people associated with home equity and how many people we will need based upon the volume of in this case, loans. This is the high number, low number, medium number, and there's a set of equations that I've written that look at some regression analyses that determine how many people we have versus how many we need versus how many are the minimum and maximum that we need on each side, and there's one of those for every line of business. And the Tableau dashboard simply allows a executive or a recruiter to log in, executive recruiter to log in and take a look and see, are we on target for the number of people that we are needing to hire versus will be hiring, and the plots, again, update themselves. Now, I go in and check the math fairly regularly on this to make sure that my projection equations, which are based upon some physics actually, are still fitting the model. And in a lot of cases they are, but sometimes we have to take some changes as things spike or change with the loan volume or application volumes or the number of customer contact calls that are made or decisions in marketing. Well, from there we move sort of into the business. What you've been looking at this point in time has been the work that we do to manage our HR functionality. And I support primarily the functionality of what we call learning and development. And learning and development is the organization at our large institution that handles training our team members. And the purpose of training at this institution is to ensure that team members are best equipped to learn, grow, develop in serving our customers. That is our core mission. It's one that we take to heart as the primary and highest focus, and it leads all the way up to our CEO in terms of what we do. So before we began to define any processes, any things, we had to recognize that these people out there, even though there are 160,000 of them, each one is a critical individual to our team and a critical team member, and each one of them has a custom-tailored learning, growth, and development plan associated with their involvement in serving our customers at our institution. So we had to develop a way to share the relationship between our HR data and line of business. The ultimate goal of our training and all of the HR and all of that information is to ensure that our team members serve our customers in the very best way. The most important people are not the people like me in the background handling computers, or certainly not our CEO. He's very, very important to the leadership of Wells Fargo, but the most important people, and he'll tell you this over and over again, are those who on the front lines interact with and serve our customers every day. So training them is a critical part. So we did a good shared relationship between learning and development in HR and the lines of business. The people who are out there in retail banking require training. It's our job to ensure that they are trained in the very best way. It is also our job as trusted learning advisors to ensure that they have the information they need. My job in that and my functionality is to ensure that the data exists to optimize that training. So we had to have a good shared relationship with the lines of business and clear communication. Then we had to have clearly defined accountability. We are responsible as the L&D and HR organization for making sure that the business has what they need to do their job. It is not their job to tell us what they need us to give. So we began studying things in the lines of business. This looks like, someone once mentioned, it looks like an ice cream called Dippin' Dots. It is, in fact, a plot of things that are related to a group of team members who work in collections for loans. And they work very hard to ensure that loans that are behind receive the contact from our organization to help people find ways to bring their accounts back up to date. And so this is a critical function of our job, and it's one that we want to study and make sure that people are doing to the best of their ability and giving the customers the best experience and tools that they have to do what they need to do with their accounts and their loans. And so we studied, for example, the time to proficiency. The day that a team member is hired is an important day. The day that they finish training is another important day. And the day that they reach an average proficiency, the length of time between completing that training and that, is very important to us to ensure that everyone is getting the opportunity to do their job well. So we studied for thousands of team members how long it took to reach proficiency, and we found that over time, the average proficiency was approximately 42 days for a new hire in this particular job function. We also began studying the effect of training on this, and we found no correlation between the length of time it took to train someone, or the trainer, or certainly the training function, to get someone good at their job, receiving high scores in customer service, receiving high scores from the customer quality, or certainly the number of accounts they were able to handle. There was no correlation. We did, however, learn as we began looking at a Tableau-based plot, people by manager. Each one of these dots is actually a manager. The size of the dot is, in fact, the number of team members under that manager. There are hundreds of dots, hundreds of managers, and hundreds of weeks from day zero. I plotted this from day zero, which is the day they finished their training, to the day that they reached a level of proficiency, somewhere around 42 days. But certain managers, we call them nurturers, brought that time to proficiency to 18 days, while supervisors that had not taken training in coaching and delegated were an average of 63 days. That told us to help this line of business that the supervisors in this type of job function for these thousands of people are, these thousands of team members are helped if they have an understanding of training, coaching, and delegating, giving clear information, and we structured to develop courses, and we're able to bring the time to proficiency down by a considerable margin. That would not have been possible in a short time period with a set of Excel files. It was very possible for me with a few clicks in Tableau plots to look at the data in this way, show the average, so this clear group up here that was higher in proficiency, and then formulate a response that we could then test and track afterwards and determine, are we in fact making an impact in this. Same type of thing is being studied for customer service, for the right party contact, the number of inbound calls people are able to handle, the number of satisfied customers they're able to handle. The scope of the information is millions of data points, but as we began looking at it and studying it by site, by location, by team member job type, by hours of training, by numbers of years on the job, we were able to begin filter and understand that certain things lend themselves to people improving faster and doing a better job in their job functionality, and for us to recommend training and learning products to the lines of business that really effectively improve these things. It's not simply a manager coming to us saying, we need better communication amongst our team members. We're able to actually go in and take a look. How is that communication structured? Are you sure it's really communication, or is it delegating? Is it having shorter team meetings? Is it all the different things that are tracked and studied here at our large banking institution? Are those things, in fact, correlated to the data associated with those team members' performance? This program allows us to study that functionality on a day-by-day, hour-by-hour. And again, let me stress, this is handled. These plots, all of this data, all this continuous feedback information has been handled in less than a year by one person, and then recently two. So we have taken this application to a level that now has hundreds of people as executives and thousands of people as senior level managers using the data on a Tableau server all day, every day at our company. So our growth, we have shifted our application from prepared reports to continuous reporting. We still do prepared reports for financial transactions, SEC requirements, and things like that. But our performance data has completely shifted and is being captured by each line of business individually to a continuously reporting function. We also control the data sets with specific access. One of the things that's associated with our Tableau server is that it was connected into our enterprise system, and initially we were able to grant the Tableau server add-in access, which is the standard access by job function associated with our large institution enterprise system for login and what we call ART requests to provide access. People were able to request access to the server. Then I, and now several other business partners within the line of business, can grant each person individual access and take that access away to views within the data set. So that project information portal is viewed by the people responsible for project management and for executive reporting to make sure that they are the only people with access to all of the data, because associated with it is underlying HR functionality and things like that, and that's one of the primary things that I look at with each set of checks and balances associated with my process and protocol to upload a new dashboard, is to ensure that the proper people have access, and only the proper people. And the nice thing about the Tableau access is you can grant access to a static picture, a filtered picture, or even to the capability of looking at the underlying data or not being able to look at the underlying or summary data associated with the view that they have. So there's a tremendous amount of access and control associated with that, and we have now universally applied the Tableau server to our reporting framework. So our next steps are to, initially for us, develop a continuous flow of what we call time to proficiency for every single job function, every single team member within our large organization. So we've got thousands of job titles. We want to know how long it takes every single one of them to start their job and how long it takes to reach proficiency for every one of them. We also want to study how long it takes them to move up within our organization, or are there gaps associated with learn, grow, develop, and improve in our organization in terms of being able to be a contributing team member that's also moving up in their career goals. Then we are expanding the application and tool use. I showed you two different applications. One is actually really unique in terms of what it's being used for, in that it's not a database application. It's being pulled from a database, but it's a tracker of projects. The other is a database application in that we have pictures of data within those databases that we want to provide to people for what's actually going on. So we're using it in different functionality aspects for different things. And so we are absolutely expanding the application and tool use. And I believe that's all that I have from my perspective for this. I'll be happy to entertain questions. I know that Duncan had some things that he was going to add.
Yeah, thank you, John. That was a great presentation, and thank you for the live demo as well. So, yeah, some questions are coming in, and I'm going to save them to the Q&A portion, which we'll do following Dustin's presentation. So, Dustin, I'm going to share the screen with you and pass it over, and you should have it there.
Outstanding. Perfect. Thank you very much, Tim. And John, thank you very much for your presentation. I really, really enjoy this use case because when we think about data analysis, when we think about big data, when we think about, leveraging data inside of a business to drive growth and innovation, human resources, employee efficiency, and training, that's almost never at the top of the list. And I love this use case that John just outlined because it shows that when you use a tool like Tableau to kind of spread out that visual analytics capability to everybody, you find pockets of innovation that suddenly yield incredible value. And so John, I love that use case. I love that use case because people are like, oh, Wells Fargo, we're going to talk about banking and securities and, yada, yada, yada. And no, there's so many different applications where visualizing big data can yield incredible insight. I had this little use case that I actually wanted to talk about, just kind of, my goal is the guy from Tableau on this call is to talk about, okay, how easy is it really to build? Full transparency, my name's Dustin Smith. I'm the Community and Product Marketing Manager at Tableau. I have a history degree with a music minor. So when we talk about, I'm going to show you some things here in a second using Tableau Desktop, what is my level of technical expertise? Yeah, I've been with the company for a while, so I'm pretty good with the software. I do not have a computer science background. I do not have a technical background. I just randomly fell into being an Excel nerd, and then one thing led to another, and I ended up at Tableau. That was my evolution. So I want you to bear that in mind when we talk about the ease of use of Tableau and how you can go from just, I've got some questions about data, to building interactive dashboards like the one you guys hopefully are seeing on my screen right now. The use case I kind of wanted to talk about is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum when we talk about human resources or human capital analytics, succession planning. So where John was really talking about, hey, we have continual employees flooding in, and we need to make sure they're trained, and we need to make sure that they're proficient and efficient in the things that they're doing, as well as their managers and executives, right? The opposite end of that spectrum is really, especially in large organizations, you'll have people that, as the company grows, right, they've had incredible careers. And when they think about retirement, when is that going to happen? How can we plan for that as an organization so that knowledge silos don't suddenly walk out of the company, or that we're making sure that knowledge, is being spread out? And again, when you're dealing with organizations like the size of Wells Fargo, or, an example, my wife works at the Boeing company, and so, again, organizations that measure their employees not in ones or twos or threes thousands, but in tens of thousands, how is an organization supposed to do that? And it's not by, checking in with certain executives saying, hey, when do you think you're going to, whatever. You have to start from the data component. And so this little dashboard that I have up here is one I'm going to rebuild for you really quick, and talking about when dealing with big chunks of data and trying to build interactive visualizations that an HR department and our human capital department can really start to look at, oh man, when we hit 2047, we really need to look at the access department, specifically the data center, because we're going to have a tremendous amount of people potentially retiring, right? Maybe they don't need to concern themselves about that right now, but as they go through and they start to look at other departments, right, how do they start to make decisions and prioritize? We really need to get in touch with specific executives to talk about succession planning for their areas of expertise. This is a real and actual concern for large organizations, especially those with a lot of intellectual property. So how do you get here, right? I'm in a web browser right now inside of Tableau Server. People can come to this view and ask questions of it and click on it, leave comments, do different things with it. How do you get here when so often what you start with is this? And, this is just raw Excel data, and I'm using this as an example of any database where you're presented with a bunch of rows and columns of information, and there's a story here. There's insight to be had here, but you just, what is it? And how quickly can you get to it? How many people is it going to take to crunch through this to drive action? And what I want to actually show you right now is, when we talk about Tableau and we talk about, I need to learn about this data set, and again, this could be Hadoop, this could be SQL Server, this could be, both of those together. It could be any number of data sources. I'm just using Excel today because it's quick and easy to show what I need to get through, but I'm just going to drag that data source, that Excel file, onto Tableau. And we talk about easy connecting to data, right? How do you go from rows and columns to, I need to get to this data source. I'm just going to choose that first sheet in the Excel. And this is Tableau Desktop. This is the Canvas authoring experience where I just connected to my Excel file, right? This is it, and these are all the columns inside of there. And I can quickly and easily just start to ask questions of my data. And so the first question I want to ask is, what is the average age of people in my company? And I learned that it's, 33 years, more or less. And you notice what I did there was just dragged and dropped information that, is in my Excel that, is now in Tableau onto this Canvas area. Well, that's a key paradigm for Tableau, is that without coding or scripting, and again, I don't have a computer science background, so if someone asked me to do that, I would fail miserably. It might be kind of funny to watch, but it's not what's going to happen today. I can quickly and easily just say, you know what, I'm curious to know what that looks like from a departmental standpoint. Oh, so I see that, in this other catch-all department that I have, right, it looks like my average age is a little older. Or even technologies, the average age is really old, 37. Org level 2, let's kind of break out these departments a little bit. Let's actually start to ask some questions of, okay, going further down, digging deeper, I can see when we look at corporate services, right, I've got another catch-all category here, average age is a little older. Maybe what I really want to see is what does that look like from a visual standpoint, and then I also want to see this broken out by gender, just to get an idea what that looks like. Okay, so there is a difference here, right? I'm seeing that, average age of men and women in same departments is a little different here, and maybe I want to orient this just a little bit differently, right? I can just take this gender information and move it like that. And I'm moving kind of quickly here, mostly to show that in just a matter of seconds using Tableau, you can approach an HR data situation like this, and I'm not typecasting anybody inside of human resources or capital planning. I think John might actually agree that he's kind of an outlier in terms of heavy-duty data analysis when it comes to HR. The everyday human resources person or the everyday succession planner is not an analytics guru. That by and large, Wells Fargo has seen that this is an incredibly important operation and has put someone like John, who is a specialist and is really, really good at what he does. He, as one powerhouse individual, has been able to do so much. How can you enable the everyday person to build out visualizations like this? And I hope what you're seeing is that quickly and easily, right, in a visual and drag and drop format, I'm answering some pretty cool questions inside of this HR data. Let's switch gears. Let's talk about, hiring trends maybe. Maybe I'm interested in hiring date, and you'll notice Tableau, when we were looking at Excel, just had a bunch of dates in here. Let me see if I can go find that. Original hire date, things like that. These are just date stamps. There's nothing special about it. They're not aggregated. Well, Tableau is smart enough to recognize that it is a date and gives you a little calendar symbol there so that I can just drag out hire date, and it gives me all the years that are in there. And then I can just drag out something like employee ID, and I'll just take the count of that, and it gives me a very quick trend line on what has effectively our hiring rate been over the last, 1985 to 2008. Looks like we have some bad data here. No problem. Let's just exclude that. That's another thing Tableau makes really easily. Let's think about this in terms of gender again. What does that look like, men and women being hired into this company? And really easily I see that they almost, lockstep. We're hiring more men than women, but that trend, the difference between them seems to be pretty static. And let's just even dig a little deeper. Let's talk about year and quarter. Right? So every quarter inside of every year. It's a little intense. That's a lot for me to consume. So I'm actually going to kind of pare down this data set a little bit by filtering out everything before 2000. And then I'll go ahead and fit with here. Okay, so now I've got this understanding of 2000, Q2, Q4, Q2, Q4. Maybe I want to go a little farther into month. And you notice how easily I'm just clicking a plus and a minus sign. Tableau is dealing with dates. This I don't think of quarters when I think of hiring. That's more of a sales thing. So I just want month, year. So I can just drag things out. Or maybe I want to see the month trend year over year. What does January look like? And the big aha moment we have here is we had a massive hiring spike in February of 2002. I'm going to smooth this thing out even more. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to say, show me this in a nice, long, continuous line for every month. Do I have this information by week? Looks like I do. Do I have this information even down to the day level? It looks like I do. At some point with this much information, you kind of lose some of the value here. You don't need to see this kind of granularity, so let's bring that back up to, let's say, month. But the cool thing about that is that I didn't have to write any special queries. I didn't have to do anything about it. If I'm playing the role of the everyday HR person who's been put in charge of succession planning, all right, I can answer some really basic questions really quickly. So let's talk about one more concept. When we're actually looking at succession planning, these are pretty basic functionalities. Give me the count of, by department, by gender, by organization level. Show me the trend line of hiring over time. Those are pretty basic analyses. Well, let's talk about how we might do a more advanced analysis. And again, I'm using Excel, but this could very easily be a much more massive data platform. Really quickly, I'm going to pop over to data connections. When we talk about big data, this could be Amazon Redshift. Right? This could be Cloudera Hadoop. This could be, MapR, Hadoop Hive. There's these massive, massive data sets. It could be a bunch at the same time. Right? You might be connected to Hadoop, and you might be connected to Oracle, and you might be connected to Excel, and you're using those all three at the same time to kind of blend information together. Right? Those are all things that Tableau can do very, very easily. But getting back to more advanced analysis, maybe the question I really want to ask is, what does I want to kind of identify, if you will, those people inside my organization that based on average age and tenure, how many, when are they likely to retire? From a macro level, if looking down, where is the group of folks that I should really be looking at and saying, you know what, it's very feasible that the next 5 to 10 years these folks may retire, and that we need to make sure we have a good succession plan in place for them. How do I build an analysis like that when I, again, am not a data analysis individual? I know I want to talk about age. I know I want to talk about, let's say, number of records, right? So the total number of people. And I want to talk about it in terms of tenure. And I see tenure down here as a number when really it should be a dimension, right? It should be a categorical. It's a number. Tableau tried to say, hey, it's going to be a measure, right? These two things here, things you categorize by versus things you measure. A metadata change, for those that are familiar with that, is as easy as dragging and dropping. And now tenure is one of these things up here so that I can say, if I want to talk about age and I want to talk about number of records or total people in my company, and I want to talk about total tenure, those are the key pieces of information I'm interested in. I have no idea what visualization to build. I just don't. I'm not a visual analytics expert. Tableau, can you help me? And very quickly, easily, there's a show me dialog, which is more of like a guide, a recommendation engine, if you will. I can build all of these things that aren't grayed out. Tableau is actually recommending the scatter plot. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. And I did this on purpose, right? I one-clicked and I got this scatter plot. It's giving me the sum of age, which I don't want that. I want the average age. And I did that on purpose to show how easy it is to change something like that inside of Tableau. Because the process of data analysis and visual analysis is you try something and it doesn't work and you change it and you try something else. And I think John can attest to that. That is his daily life. I'm going to reorient this a little bit. I'm going to bring in maybe org level 2 into this data set. And I'm going to take a look at this. And I'm going to realize, too, that when I'm thinking about succession planning, I don't really, there's some bad data in here. I'm not really concerned with people that have only been with the company, 6 years. And I'm only concerned with 7 years or on. And then maybe I want to make size based on how long they've been with the company. And I start to get a little picture here. What I see are some big circles over here for, it doesn't look like I have a lot of people over there, right? And their average age is plus 50, right? So this may be an area that I want to focus on. I actually want to hone in on this a little bit. Let's go ahead and make that 20. I'm just going to shorten this axis to really kind of focus in on the information that I care about. Let's even do a more advanced analysis where I say, show me based on a statistical quantile. Where does this age makeup kind of break out? And I'm just going to use some colors here real quick. And I know I'm moving fast, but again, it's to kind of prove the point that just by using my mouse, I haven't really even touched my keyboard yet, I can quickly and easily say, hey, right, everybody between here and here, this is my lower quantile, this is my medium quantile, and this is my upper quantile up here. So that when I think about succession planning, when I think about those people that have been with the company a long time, right, have these big circles because we have tenure on size, that are, in the upper quantile of average age of the company, and there aren't a whole lot of people that do what they do, these are the folks that I need to focus on. Right? I employed some statistical analysis. I employed an advanced visualization type called a scatter plot. And then I can throw all that information really quickly and easily onto a dashboard. I'm actually going to optimize this from the get-go for people with an iPad, since I know that my total goal is really to make this so that I can publish it online and give people a chance to view it. And let's just bring in some of those visualizations that I built. There's my little bar chart. There is my time trend. Here is my scatter plot. Here's that filter that I built, to filter out other information. Right now, it's only applying to this right here, my time trend, but if I really quickly wanted to just say, hey, apply this to all using data sets, right? Suddenly, every one of these visualizations is now respecting this filter. That was an easy choice for me to do. Likewise, I might say, you know what, use this sheet as a filter. So when I select just these two circles right here, it's going to filter the other visualizations to show me, right, their higher trend, where they're at, the breakdown of org level 2 and gender and things like that. And then to publish this up is as easy as just to say, I'm going to publish up this workbook. I'm going to log in real quick. And what I'm going to do here is go from my desktop experience, my authoring. Let's go ahead and publish all of these sheets up, and put it on the web on a little Tableau server running on my laptop that just allows people to quickly and easily. I can send them a link. They can evaluate this dashboard, or I created this for my entire HR team now, that they can look at it and they can use it and they can interact with it. And it's going to go from my desktop. And again, John talked about the permissioning capabilities that are included in Tableau Server. I've got full control. And so now this is going to load in a browser. Let's actually go look at this in a web browser real quick. And there's my dashboard.
Hey, Dustin, as you do that, I just want to let you know we're running a little low on time. So,
okay.
Well,
and this perfect conclusion then is this is, I'm all finished now. This is going to load up, and I think my wireless is a little slow here. But effectively what I've done is I went from rows and columns of data, and I brought it into Tableau, and in just a few seconds, a couple minutes actually, but within seconds I was visualizing and actually building rather complicated analyses, all with a few clicks. And again, bringing it back to big data and HR analysis and the incredible capabilities of when this is applied to things outside of your typical thoughts of what data analysis should be. Tableau allows for anybody with data questions to really kind of get to that business value very, very quickly. So that is the conclusion of my demonstration, and thank you very much, Tim, for letting me know. I think at this point I'll turn it back over to you.
Great, thanks so much. Let me pull the screen share back to me here. Give me just a moment. Okay, you all should see my screen there. So that was a great presentation. Thanks for the live demo as well. I think it really tied things nicely together. We had a lot of questions come in, so there's a lot of folks wanting more detail about the data, the 4 V's, sort of volume, variety, velocity, value, structured and unstructured. Unfortunately, we have only a few minutes left, so again, there were several questions really dealing with the types of data and structured versus unstructured. So in the essence of time, if John, why don't you do you have a quick minute? You can give a quick answer in terms of where the data was sort of sourced and how you deal with those 4 Bs.
Yes, absolutely. My data does come from multiple sources. The simplest I have found is to tap directly into a server. One of the wonderful aspects of the Tableau engine, you saw one example of it grabbing a hold of information from a Excel file with a list of columns, rows, and things like that. One of the things that you learn is that all the things you used to use that were difficult, pivot tables and things like that, tend to get in the way when you're dealing with Tableau. So for simple things like Excel files, the easier the less structured the data, the faster and easier it is to rip into Tableau and begin using it and analyzing it. And you quickly get real quick at determining what's your measure versus your records in that case, and it's very, very simple for you. The other types of data, it really depends upon the server, whether it's a Hadoop or a large, some of our SQL servers, we have large Teradata sources, things like that. It really just depends upon the server. The Tableau engine that you're seeing on your desktop, once it connects and grabs a hold of that information, you can source all of it. Most of the time I don't do that. I use the server to do a lot of my calculations and compounding prior to it being moved into the Tableau engine, just because that makes it easier to publish my workbooks from a speed perspective. But the unique aspect of it is once you have the Tableau data engine connected to the server, it simply grabs a list of records. So let's say there is something which has a 3-digit code like a SQL server has for some sort of number, and that number may be a team member ID. Tableau will initially take a look at that and say, that's a number, it's probably a metric, it's probably a value that I need to study. You can grab it and pull it up and it becomes a record, and I call that team member ID. I can change the number in Tableau to be called team member ID. And then there'll be another column which says perhaps date of hire. That Tableau automatically knows that and recognizes and says, I think this is a date. I'll go ahead and plug it in as a date. Then there might be something like another date for the day a performance metric was analyzed, then some number like 76% or 43% or something like that. And there'll be a date, a team member ID, and a number like 64% or 74%. That all shows up as just buckets of information that, like Duncan showed, you can grab, dump into the visualization portion, and it immediately sorts it in ways that you can start quickly getting a feel. You get a feel for it very fast to organize it in ways that give you the fastest visualization, and then you start learning ways to tweak it and organize it after that. I have not had a data system at this point in time that I have not been able to immediately rip into Tableau. There's very often a codex type of thing where you have to talk to the database administrator and say, hey, where is the record functionality? And they'll say it's 114 is the record code for team member ID. And at that point in time, that column of information for team member ID, I just changed the record 114 to team member ID in Tableau's functionality, and I never see it again at that point in time. After that, every time Tableau logs in.
I'm going to jump in here just in the essence of people's time and their commitment to the hour. I appreciate the thoughtful question, the thoughtful answer to the question, and to our audience, rest assured, anybody that didn't have their, obviously plenty of you that didn't have your questions answered because we ran out of time, both John and Dustin's email address is on the screen and has been. Hopefully you can take that down. I will be sending all of the unanswered questions to Tableau and to Dustin and John, and they can follow up with you directly. Just before we end, I just have a couple of quick announcements here. Please mark your calendars for August 13th and our next Data Science Central webinar, which is Accelerating Big Data, sponsored by Pivotal. And as I mentioned, this event is being taped, so everyone can view it on datasciencecentral.com later today in the video section. This concludes our webinar, and I'd like to thank our audience again for their attendance and thoughtful questions. And a special thank you to Tableau again for sponsoring our event, and to our panelists, John St. John and Dustin Smith, for their insight into today's topic. My name is Tim Madison. I am very pleased to have been the host for today's event, and I look forward to seeing you all again on August 13th. Good day.